Challenger deck review. We got the Challenger decks a month ago. We have played them against each other. We have played them a lot over the past month. Coming up is what we have learned. And I also talked with Gavin Verhey about the Challenger decks. And we are starting right now.
Reaching and teaching young mages of all ages.
Welcome, young mage. I'm Rhino. Before we get started, tell me in the comments below which Challenger deck do you think will be the most popular? After playing these decks for a month, I have a few things to say about them. Number one, they are really competitive. No matter how you look at it, it's great to have a ready-to-play deck. You can pick one of these up and play it out of the box. No changes necessary. Number two, they even up the game. My dad is a much better deck builder than me. I'm getting better each day, but when I play them with these decks, I win a lot more. Number three, they are awesome for new or young players. You don't need to know how to build a deck. You can just play and learn how the deck works. Later you can change a few cards and see how that changes how the deck plays. They are an excellent learning tool. I had a chance to chat with Gavin Verhey from Wizards of the Coast about the decks. Here's what we talked about. Gavin, tell me how you got started at Wizards of the Coast and the R&D team.
Well, that's a great story, actually. When I was 10 years old, I started playing Magic. How old are you right now?
I'm 12.
12, right? So not too much younger than you. I started playing Magic. And when I was 11, I decided I wanted to go work for Wizards, of course, naturally. So I started making my own cards and wanted to go try and design. And I went up at a local event, a guy named Randy Bueller, who was the VP of R&D at the time, and I asked him what I was going to need to come work at Wizards. And he told me, Gavin, you're going to need two things. You're going to need a college degree, and then my heart just sunk. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like 10 years old or 11 years old. When is that going to happen? It's going to be so long from now. But then he said the second thing you need to be like a pro player or someone who's good at the game so we know who you are. And so I was like, okay, two things, college degree and be a Magic pro. I can do both those. So I started college when I was 16. I was homeschooled growing up. So I started college when I was 16, and then I graduated when I was 20. I played pro Magic the whole time. And then shortly after I graduated, I got picked up by Wizards. I've been there since 2001, so 6.5, 7 years. And I've had a blast. It's an amazing place to be.
Okay, cool.
You said 2001, you meant 2000.
Oh, 2011. Sorry.
Oh, 2000. Okay. I was like,
sorry.
whoa,
I've been at Wizards since. I'm not. That doesn't quite work out. I've been at Wizards since 2011. Had a blast, and it's really an amazing place to be. I love the company, and I love working with these great friends I get to hang out with every single day.
I really want to know more about the Challenger decks. How did the R&D team pick which decks to make into Challenger decks?
Yeah, that's a really great question. A big thing for us is we wanted to make sure that we hit a few different important things with the Challenger decks. A big one was making sure that there was a good representation of colors across them. So for example, if you look at the decks, you'll see that there's the red, white, black vehicles deck, there is the green, black constrictor deck, there is the white, blue approach deck, and there is the mono red deck to kind of give a good spread of colors, and also, importantly, a good spread of play styles. Regardless of if I want to play an aggressive deck, a mid-range deck, a control deck, there's something for you. And a really important thing about the Challenger decks this time around is we wanted to do 4 of them so that when you went into a store, you would have choice. You could pick what kind of strategy you wanted. Instead of being like, well, there's just one of them out there. I don't really like that strategy. I'm not going to pick it up. No matter who you are, there's a strategy for you in these Challenger decks. And to me, that's one of the most compelling things about them is if you're new or experienced or you know the format or don't know the format or you're coming back in and you want to try and find your play style, you can grab the one that works out great.
What do you think makes these decks challenging?
I think these decks, we called them the Challenger decks because we wanted you to be able to go to your local Friday Night Magic, grab one, and be a challenger, be a competitor. And so to me, the decks have their own challenges and own intricacies when you play them, so it's kind of a double meaning there. But it really helps you be a strong challenger. Our stated goal when we were working on them was that we want you to be able to sit down at a F&M and not just have a deck that might go 2-2 or something like that, but really have a strong, challenging deck that you could theoretically take down the tournament with, a strong, competitive deck. And I'm so happy where we ended up with these, and I think they're an absolute blast to play.
Did the team design the sideboards for just these decks or for other decks too?
So when we were working on these decks, it's not just about the 4 decks, of course, that we ended up printing, but also about all the other decks we thought would be in the format. So we tested with a wide variety of decks, and actually we investigated many different archetypes of standard decks for these 4 Challenger decks. And we built up deck lists for all of them and sideboards for all of them and tweaked them all. So while we ultimately, of course, ended up printing these 4 and the 4 sideboards that went along with them inside the Challenger decks, we tried out a ton of options. And in R&D, we're playtesting all the time and constantly coming up with new sideboards and new main decks and new ideas for sideboard cards. And it's even harder than in the real world because the cards are changing all the time. And so working on these Challenger decks was a great way for us to settle down and say, okay, we've got this card pool of Standard. We know Standard is going to look like this. What are the different kind of builds we can make out of it? So yeah, we did design a bunch of sideboards, and we ended up using these 4 for these 4 decks. But we gave enough variety inside of the sideboards that it kind of points you in some directions. Like, oh, there's a 1 copy of this card. Maybe I'll go get some more copies of that card and try them out. So we wanted to make sure there was a wide variety of options. Another thing is here at Wizards, we work really far ahead on our products. So the Challenger decks are actually one of the shortest release cycle things we have, in that we finished them late last year. And we wanted to make sure, though, because Standard was going to evolve, Rivals of Ixalan wasn't out yet, and we wanted to make sure that the sideboards had enough tools that no matter what decks kind of showed up, there would be answers for them. So that's why you see, a couple 1-ofs and 2-ofs as kind of like, hey, if this deck's good, maybe this card will end up being strong. If this deck's good, maybe this other card will end up being strong, to kind of make sure that all your bases could be covered.
The Challenger decks are a great learning tool for new and young players. Are there some surprises in the decks for new players, like fun combos or card synergies?
For me, one of the most exciting parts about the Challenger decks is that it brings all those high-level synergies at the top tables of Standard and puts them into the hands of someone brand new or someone who's getting into the competitive scene. So the first time you're playing, say, the green-black counters deck, and you've got your Winding Constrictor in play, and you play your Walking Ballista, and it gets an extra counter, and then you play a Rishkar or something, put an extra counter on it, and then you have all these counter synergies working, and you activate your Ballista, you put another counter on it, it gets 2 counters. Like, you see all these synergies start to come together. Is an awesome, awesome moment, and I love that. I absolutely love that about these decks, because you really see, like, okay, I've seen these cards. I know the Walking Ballista is strong. I know the Winding Constrictor is strong. But actually playing them together and kind of saying, oh, man, it does this and this thing that I didn't even realize, that's really, really cool. Or, when you're playing the Mardu Vehicles deck and you're like, okay, well, I can remove a counter on my turn from my Planeswalker to activate Heart of Kiran, and then on their turn, I can also remove a counter to activate Heart of Kiran again. You get these tiny little synergies, which I find really fun.
Not everyone can trade for all the cards they may want. What would you suggest as some simple upgrades for these decks?
So, in general, the Challenger decks were made to be in pretty good shape, so you could, pull them out, play them at a tournament, and be pretty successful. But there are a few cards that there's only 1 or 2 copies of that might be better to expand. For example, in the Hazoret red deck, adding more copies of Hazoret or Chandra would make a lot of sense if you have access to those. In the Approaches of the Second Sun deck, we didn't include any Search for Azkantas, and that's a card that's turned out to be pretty huge in that deck, so going to find those could be a pretty nice inclusion. For the green-black counters deck, I think a couple more Walking Ballistas would be nice. Fatal Push would be pretty good to have there as well. And nothing comes to mind for the Mardu Vehicles deck, but if you look at some of the top-performing versions of that deck right now, there might be some small tweaks based on the metagame that are worth making. And of course, I always like, when I'm tweaking a deck, to look at not only what I think would be good upgrades, adding in more Hazarets or Chandras, but also look at the whole format and kind of think about, okay, well now that, for example, this blue-black mid-range deck is really popular, what are some cards that can help combat that deck that weren't in this deck in the first place? And thinking about that, and it's kind of from a metagame angle, as well as just an upgrade angle, is going to give you the best deck at the end of the day, for sure.
Which of the 4 challenger decks is your favorite, and why it is the best?
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I've been a control player. I've always been a control player. And when we were working on Approach of the Second Sun in Magic R&D, I fell in love with that card immediately. Like a card that says you win the game on it, it's so cool. And you've got this little mini game of how can I dig 7 cards deeper in my library. And there's all these great high-tension moments where you cast it, and your opponent knows in 7 turns or less, the game is going to be over. You're going to draw it again. You're going to beat your opponent. So there's this great little mini game, right? In a number of games that you end at like 1 life, and then you draw 2 cards at the end of their turn or something, untap and play Approach. It makes me happy every single time. So that's my favorite of the decks. I really love it. And if I was going to F&M or any kind of big tournament, that's probably the deck I would bring, or a variation on it. I think it's a blast to play.
Can you tell us how often can we expect new challenger decks to come out?
One of the big things for us with challenger decks is we really wanted to see how the public reacted to them and how everyone out there, all you folks, really took to them. The reception so far has been so positive, which is fantastic, and I'm really, really glad because we weren't entirely sure how it was going to play out, and now now, of course, it's easy to say, hey, these are awesome, everyone loves them, but we weren't entirely sure at the time. So, we're talking about it a lot internally, and they actually, as of this recording, they come out tomorrow. So once they start hitting stores and we start seeing how they're doing there and what kind of feedback we get, we'll look at when we want to do the next ones. But with the challenger decks, we were actually able to tweak our process so we could make them a lot closer to when they had to come out to make sure that we could get the standard decks as close to real-world standard decks as possible. So we have a little bit of time on these, and we can actually gauge the real-world reaction before we have to make any final decisions on the next ones. So if they're popular, I'd love to say we'll do them again, but time will tell.
I know that the challenger decks are for standard. Are there any discussions about doing something similar for other formats like Brawl, Pauper, or even Modern?
I think a lot of that really comes back to the reception we get on these. So far, as I said, the reception's been so great. And if these are really popular, we could absolutely look into doing them for other formats potentially. I feel like with Brawl, like a format that you mentioned, the challenger decks are already part of your way there. They're all standard legal decks. You can open them up between your main deck and the cards you get in your sideboard, and maybe a few things you have lying around your collection. You're not that far off from just being able to make a Brawl deck with what you get inside a challenger deck. So those two kind of work out well together. As far as other formats, back when we did the event decks, eventually we came out with a modern event deck, so it's not off the table for us to investigate other options of doing this. But we wanted to start with Standard because Standard is one of our most approachable formats, and if you're new and getting in, it's a great place to start because all the cards you have, you can put into your Standard deck. If you've just bought a few booster packs of Ixalan or Rivals of Ixalan or Dominaria when it comes out, it's pretty easy to slot things in. And now it's actually a pretty good timing because you can go out, buy your Challenger deck, get used to it a little bit, and then once Dominaria hits, you can open some packs and slot some cards right in, and you'll have known the deck for a little while enough that you understand the intricacies of how it works. So I'm pretty excited for that, and you wouldn't necessarily be able to do that quite as easily with other formats, but it's absolutely something on the table and something that we're going to be considering going forward. Challenger decks seem like a pretty big hit so far.
Wow, it was a lot of fun talking to you. Thanks for giving me some of your time.
And it's an absolute pleasure talking to you, Rhino. Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on. And I really hope you guys all enjoy the Challenger decks. They've been a labor of love by the R&D team. And here's to doing more in the future, hopefully.
Are you ready to get a Challenger deck? Or do you think you may get one for a friend? Let me know in the comments below. I have more videos coming out soon showing you how to upgrade decks and play Magic better. So subscribe now by hitting that Rhino down below. And don't forget the bell notification so you don't miss a single one. These videos are possible because of my generous patrons and sponsors. Check out the videos on the side. They will interest you. I have more videos coming out soon. So until then, Rhino out.